Before we get into, I intro Anu and we talk about Expensify, I do want to talk about, real quick, Acuity Cares. And so this is actually a little bit of a departure. In all years past at AcuityCon, we've had one of our Acuity Cares clients who's been a keynote speaker. And we're not this year, partly because we've got so many, we have more Acuity Cares clients now. We have so many great speakers, but we wanted to find a way to still give some updates on how they're doing. And real quickly, for those of you who may not be familiar with our Acuity Cares program, it is we kind of view as our charitable arm. We select a few charities that we work with that we provide all their accounting and financial assistance for free. We are very specific in who we work with because nonprofits are not exactly, what we focus on from a vertical perspective. We think that all of the Acuity Cares clients we work with are doing huge things in the world, and we love supporting them on their mission. And I know a number of team members here. I see Melissa Powell over there. I see Nita. I see others who have worked with our Acuity Cares clients, and they are a joy to work with and serve. And so while they are not here with us, actually we'll have one of them here tomorrow. We'll do another video tomorrow, and their product will be here tomorrow that I know we'll drink a lot of in the morning, Refuge Coffee. Wanted to show a quick video that Joey Womack, that we just spoke about in the SaaS panel from Goody Nation, just wanted us to hear about what's happening at Goody Nation and just give a little bit of a shout out to Acuity. So, buddy, if you wouldn't mind playing that video from Joey.
Hello, I am Joey Womack, founder and CEO of Goody Nation. I'm a natural convener of people, ecosystem developer, and community builder. It's my life's purpose to equalize socioeconomic disparities all over the world, and it's my life's goal to positively influence 1 billion people by the year 2039. Goody Nation is focused on closing what we call the relationship gap for tech-focused social entrepreneurs and diverse founders from all backgrounds. So when I say the relationship gap, I'm talking about the lack of connection between founders and those that are influential in business, particularly in tech. And so what ends up happening where there's a lack of connection, it leads to lack of access to capital, but it also leads to lack of access to customers, to talent, to experienced entrepreneurs, and to other people who can give advice, which all leads to higher levels of stress for entrepreneurs, or said differently, it leads to a higher likelihood that they will not succeed or reach their potential. So at Goody Nation, we're really a community of awesome founders, investors, coaches, and partners, all working to build relationships between each other to give awesome founders access to capital, to coaching, and to customers. Currently, we sit at about 500 founders representing about 33 states and 9 other countries outside the US. And we're also a partner with Google for Startups on the Black Founders Fund and Latino Founders Fund. We've done some exciting things with Goody Nation. We have a lot of great things coming up. So for example, during the summer, we onboarded over 120 founders to our program. These founders coming from the Black Founders Fund, Latino Founders Fund, Google for Startups, as well as for some awesome accelerators from all over the country. Moving forward, we have some awesome things slated. We're going to launch our first ever Goody Nation Summit in October of this year in Atlanta during Atlanta Tech Week. It's our first convening of all type of stakeholders in the Goody Nation community. Again, founders, investors, partners, and coaches, all talking about how we can build a better, or said differently, a more magnetic Goody Nation community in 2023. Moving forward. Acuity helps Goody Nation create a competitive advantage through operational efficiency. As a growing but yet not large nonprofit with a big budget, we have to make a difference by being super efficient, especially on the back end. So what I know, what I can trust with Acuity, that it'll get done. When I need the information, when it relates to like board members, sponsors, and funders, I can trust that it's done. It's done well, it's done right, and it's done on time. And that relieves a lot of stress on me as a CEO, which pays enormous dividends. And so if it wasn't for Acuity, I think we'd be struggling right now to keep up with the substantial growth of Goody Nation, but also we would struggle to kind of get to the next level.
Always great seeing Joey and his crew. We're thankful for all the team that works with Joey and Goody Nation. We'll maybe have some exciting news with Joey. He kind of let me know under the radar about a partnership he's got going on with one of our tech stack partners. It's not to be disclosed yet, but let's just see Joey and his team on some national advertising and even some interesting billboards and things out on the West Coast. So he thanks Acuity for just all the work that y'all have been doing and all the connections we've helped him make. They're just a joy to work with. So thank you to the team members who work with there. And we'll look forward tomorrow to sharing some more from Acuity Cares clients. But now, I want to introduce our next keynote speaker. And before I do that, I guess I just want to say that last week, I was with a group of other peers in the accounting industry. Many of them and most of them were other, I would say, front-running kind of accounting firms, thinking very future forward. And we were with some other technology partners. And the question came up that got posed to all of us was, well, really, when we think about innovation, we think about like who's really out front doing unique things in the accounting space. Who do y'all think of from a tech perspective? And so this was everybody's kind of throwing their things in there. And again, not just because they're our presenting sponsor, I said, it's Expensify. It is, regardless, yes, some people may think there's controversial or there are crazy emails that come out or weird advertising campaigns. All those things that I think Anu is going to talk about that is part of their values and part of their culture. What I said, and I think others agreed with, was you cannot take your eyes off what they're doing in our space because it is unique. It is front-running. It's courageous. And I think that's such a unique story, and it's something that we at Acuity, I know, have been aspiring to, like, how do we bring disruptive change to the space we needed? And so I'm really excited to have Anu here, the COO of Expensify, to talk just about some of the really interesting things that they have been doing. I think we're also going to get to hear about her growth in leadership. And so it's a huge, huge privilege just to welcome Anu to our stage here from Expensify. Thank you, Anu. Come on up.
Thank you. That's quite the intro. Thank you, Kenji. So, I was told I would be standing here today at 4 o'clock between you and happy hour. And that just wasn't going to work because that's probably the worst, least enviable position for a speaker. So me and my colleagues went bowling last night. And after I had 2 old fashions, I said, you guys, no, that is the worst thing. We need to get everybody a glass of champagne. And then I just kind of forgot about it, went to sleep, woke up, hangover. Ryan, one of my colleagues, texts me and goes, well, okay, everyone's really excited about the champagne. And I was like, what? We're really doing that? And I don't deserve my colleagues because they went out in this hot sun and got everybody champagne and then distributed it and even topped you off. So a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. So now I have to do them proud, right? And I'm going to have to make sure that I'm able to entertain all of you with what I'm about to say. Okay, so first things first, I want to tell you guys a story. And go with me here. It's kind of long. It has a lot of background and background to the background. But there's a point, and I will land it. But just kind of work with me. Okay, the story is about this man on the rocket. In order for you to understand what's going on here, I have to tell you what we were doing last year. So Expensify went public last year. It was kind of a crazy adventure. We had a great time, but there were lots of bumps along the road. Now, maybe you've seen this before in the news, maybe you haven't, but when a company goes public, they generally do this announcement way in the beginning. It's super boilerplate and very templatized and has absolutely no real detail. It literally just says, company about to go public, we will issue some number of shares. We're not sure how much yet. It will be priced at some number, not sure yet. It's just a signal to the market, and the SEC cares about it. It's like an FYI to them. Now, Expensify, if you know us at all, you know that we like to do things different, and we like to just have fun with everything we do, to a fault. So we decided this IPO was obviously a PR opportunity for us. It wasn't just about going public. So while we will do this templatized announcement, we also wanted to do something fun on top of it. So we made a video. This is where the context on the context. So I'm going to show you the video, because after you watch it, you'll understand what I'm about to say that much better. Buddy, can we cue the video?
Expensify announced that it has confidentially submitted a draft registration statement on Form S-1 to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, relating to its proposed initial public offering of its common stock. The size and price range for the proposed offering have not yet been determined. The initial public offering is expected to commence after the completion of the SEC review process, subject to market and other conditions. This press release is being made pursuant to and in accordance with Rule 135 under the Securities Act of 1933, as amended, the Securities Act, and shall not constitute an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy any securities. Any offers, solicitations, or offers to buy, or any sales of securities will be made in accordance with the registration requirements of the Securities Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the ad, or rather the announcement. And it's cute, right? It's spunky, it's got personality. Now, why this specific ad? Context on the context. The first 8 years, 9 years of our company's existence, we really didn't do any kind of marketing. We didn't do any outbound sales. We did no advertising. The business grew entirely by word of mouth. But in 2018, we decided we should get in on all the advertising action because seems like fun. And like I said before, we never half-ass anything. So as soon as we decided we would advertise, we decided to make a Super Bowl ad. The Super Bowl ad story goes like this. 2 Chainz and his rapper buddies are making a music video. As rappers tend to do, they were playing fast and loose with their budget, just like spending money like champagne, letting it flow. Adam Scott is their accountant, so you guys were well represented. He is not happy with this, so he's kind of chasing them down and asking them to keep their receipts and just like watch what they're doing. 2 Chainz' manager, who's actually this guy on the rocket, is frustrated with this accountant constantly nagging him, and at one point goes, dude, you need to chill out because we have Expensify. Adam Scott checks out the product, is super impressed, and lets his hair down and joins them in the fun. So that's the ad. Now, first of all, for a business expense management company to make a Super Bowl ad is kind of weird. And second of all, for them to make an ad like that is even more strange. So in a way, we were very proud of this ad because this reflected our company culture and our ethos and who we were so perfectly, and was nothing like the boring business expense product that everybody else might think we are. So it was kind of a landmark event, and we loved it. We participated in the process every step of the way as the company, and just fun times all around. Fast forward 2 years, when we were going public and we wanted to make this fun video, we wanted to use the same cast of characters. So these 2 guys were in the ad, we rehired them, and we shot that video. Now, here's the problem. Our bankers and their lawyers were horrified by this idea. And to be fair, bankers generally don't want you to go off script at all. They just don't want you to do anything that is not by the book, because no risk is really worth taking to them. But they kind of packaged it up like they had a very specific concern with this. And their stated concern was that this guy, and you saw the video, he's kind of riding his rocket. Their concern was that the fact that this guy was riding a rocket seems to suggest that we are implying our shares will take off like a rocket when we launch it. And that kind of thing is illegal. Like, you're not allowed to tell people how your shares are going to do and urge them to buy directly. It all has to go through the bankers. And of course, we know that. But we thought this was a ridiculous concern because, wow, what a stretch from the guy that is sitting on the rocket eating Jell-O to we are suggesting that our shares are going to take. So we just didn't really, this didn't resonate with us. We didn't really care. We wanted to make our video. But we do need those bankers to sign off on it. So we asked our lawyer to negotiate with the bankers and their lawyers to get them to back off. At this point, again, I have to tell you a little bit about our lawyer, because only then will the rest of the story be actually as hilarious as it really is. So our lawyer is kind of a big deal. He is probably the foremost expert on public company law and SEC rules and regulations in the entire country. This guy basically invented the dual listing. So he's a big deal. He's a serious guy. He deals in much bigger issues than that silly video. But we were paying this guy top dollar to negotiate with our bankers to get us get them to allow us to make this silly video. Now, in the process of going public, every day is a new adventure, and you can't really predict what you're going to be working on, but that one was just comical. So, on what was probably the nth phone call on the subject, our lawyer has this his just moment of great frustration with this entire thing and says, guys, I understand that this guy's on a rocket, but clearly that rocket is going nowhere. And that was the clincher. Apparently every argument failed, but that one made sense, so they totally backed off. Now, why am I telling you this story, right? Well, for starters, if any of you decide to make your own rocket ship, maybe make sure it goes somewhere unlike us. But on a more serious note, if ever you decide to do something different and you decide to walk off the trodden path, there'll be at least one person that is going to come to you and say, don't do it. But if their reasoning does not make sense to you, then don't let them drag you down. Use every argument you can think of, because you never know which one is going to be that last straw that breaks the camel's back and allows you to get what you want. That's the moral of the story. So, again, I'm very happy to be here, very excited, very grateful for the opportunity. And, I want to use the time that we have together to try and take you on a personal journey with me. I want to take you back maybe 25 years, and I want to introduce you to the 15-year-old version of me. I was born in a very middle-class family in India, and my parents drilled it into me very early on that if I wanted the finer things in life, then I would have to work doubly hard for them, because I didn't quite have the same financial opportunities that were available to a lot of my peers. Most of my life was spent pretty much trying to find the intersection between what I was good at and what made a lot of money. And along the way, people are always telling you, hey, you know what? Money is not everything. I have a theory about those people. They're probably very rich. Because, yeah, money isn't everything, but it's a lot of things, and it gets you access to a lot of things. And you know what? I wanted the finer things in life. So I've always been an incredibly hard worker. As a kid, I used to study all the time. I was super academically inclined. If there was ever a scholarship to be won, I would win it. If there was ever a sought-after job that came on campus for campus interviews, I would get the job. But that only happened because I always made sure I was that much more prepared than the next person. So this was the kicker, though. Although largely all of my efforts were mostly successful besides a setback here and there, and on paper, I think most people would have considered me successful, none of my accomplishments really left me with any lasting sense of joy. When I think about it in retrospect, I think what I was chasing was this feeling of motivation and excitement and feeling inspired and being passionate about what I did. But I just kind of didn't have any of that. A few years ago, I read this quote by Einstein, smart guy. He basically says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That really resonated with me. And so I decided if I ever had any shot at getting out of this rut of averageness that I felt, I should do something different. I should rock the boat. But I didn't know quite what to do. So I decided on an experiment. I decided, since all my natural instincts, which are kind of programmed by social conditioning, of course, had gotten me to that particular place and time, I would spend a very definite amount of time trying to go very deliberately against my instincts and see where that got me. Any of you that's ever watched Seinfeld probably know this joke. Costanza attempts this, and it kind of works out for him mostly. That's why I called it the 2-year Costanza experiment, because I decided I would do it for 2 years. Now, I don't know if I was really all that sane, all that there, because I was basing my life on this sitcom comedy character, but, desperate times called for desperate measures. I was the VP of Business Development at the time at a payments company. It was a successful company. The title meant a lot to me, although it didn't bring me any joy. I quit that job to take this gig at Expensify. I actually took a massive pay cut, joined at the bottom of the totem pole, no team, no title. But the only reason I took it is because the company was super flat. Like you can see, it's super weird, just doing things their own way. And they were willing to take a chance on me. They said, do whatever you want, do it however you want it, so long as you're furthering business goals, just create your own role. And that was super appealing to me. That's what I needed. I'm not going to pretend the road was smooth by any measure. In the beginning especially, it felt very traumatic, and it was rife with a lot of struggle, mostly personal. But to say that the next 7 years changed me as a human being, and I know how crazy that sounds, is still an understatement. So, as I was thinking about what I want to talk to you guys about today, I figured I would do a look back and try to distill everything I learned that changed me into perhaps 3 core principles and share them with you. And maybe in some small way, that'll be useful to you along the road of life. How does that sound? Amazing. Let's do it. So the first principle is talk yourself into it and not out of it. It seems fairly obvious, but it's the most counterintuitive thing. The first challenge, and really the most massive challenge for me when I joined Expensify, was my total and complete inability to visualize success. In every sense of the word, it felt like I'd taken this massive leap back in my career. So I couldn't quite visualize how I was going to get from there to this place of motivation and fulfillment and passion that I wanted to get to. There was this really loud voice in my head all the time, and it kept saying, this is really stupid. You need to go back to what you know and understand, and you need to keep building on it, because if anything is going to work, that's going to work, not this. I want to ask you guys a few questions, see if we can poll the room. How many of you consider yourselves extremely left-brained, very analytical, logical, all about linear thinking? Show of hands. Okay, a lot of you. Me too. And I bet all of you consider that your strength, yeah? Like everything you are because you have this ability to be logical and to grasp nuanced concepts and process them and be analytical and objective, yeah? I thought that about myself. But if you think that, along with me, we couldn't be more wrong. Here's why. Your conscious brain, which is responsible for most of your analytical activity, all of your analytical activity, I should say, makes up a meager 5% of brain function. The remaining 95% is your unconscious brain. Let's quantify this even further. Your conscious brain processes information at 40 neurons per minute. I want some people here to take a guess. Just shout out a number. How fast and how much information do you think your unconscious brain can process in that same time span? 10, 50,000? 200. Try 40 million. So I don't think we need any more statistics, really, to establish as fact amongst ourselves the fact that your unconscious brain is just gigantically and exponentially more powerful than your conscious brain, right? Here are 3 more facts about your unconscious brain, which added to this will help me finally land my point. Your unconscious brain is entirely habit-based. So if you've been doing something and you've been doing it over and over again, your unconscious brain just by default walks that path. 2, your unconscious brain lives in the present, does not understand this concept of the past, nostalgia, regret, planning your future in some objective fashion. Like, that's not your unconscious brain's job. 3, and this is the most important, your unconscious brain is very literal. So if you tell your brain, I can do this, your unconscious brain literally assumes you can. And if you tell yourself, I don't know, this seems really hard, I don't know if this is going to work, your unconscious brain will assume literally that you can't do it because it's too hard. Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy, yeah? I have further questions for you. How many of you have ever had an idea, and when you had the idea, you're like, oh my God, I got this, like this is an amazing idea, and then instantly think of all the ways that idea could fail? And, somewhat better but still bad, the other version of that is you have an idea, and then you instantly start planning and charting exactly what needs to happen to bring that idea to fruition. And in so doing, you kind of map out this long road filled with hard work and struggle and chances that you need to take in order for this to work, and kind of just overwhelm yourself. In a sense, that's what was happening to me when I took the job, because I just couldn't really see how this was going to work out. And so I kept imagining all the ways it wouldn't work out, and I would still be exactly where I was, only worse off, because now I even had less money, remember? So I had one thing going for me, which was that the status quo made me miserable. So going back to it was even worse than kind of sticking it out. And I had told myself 2 years, so I was kind of committed to that. What I started to do was show up, pick up a project, do it. Pick up something else and do it. And just ignore that loud voice in my head that was talking to me constantly about how none of this was going to work. Something miraculous started to happen. Somewhere along the way, taking one step at a time, I was able to visualize success. And I didn't really try, it just organically happened. My role started to feel more fleshed out. I started to get excited about doing things. There was color in my life again, and I could kind of paint between the lines, and I could kind of visualize this all working out for me. And as this was happening, that loud voice in my head kept getting softer and softer. And to be clear, it's still there, but it's just really quiet, and I'm able to just tell it to be quiet when I don't want to listen to it. So, what is my point? The message I hope you can take from this is the next time you have an amazing idea, talk yourself into it. Don't talk yourself out of it. But talking yourself into it could literally just be, take one step forward. You don't have to commit to the idea. You don't have to figure out how to do everything. Just take the first step, then take another step. And you will see that if the idea has legs, a path will automatically form. And you will be able to visualize how to take this to the next level, and then the next level. And before you know it, your amazing idea will have come to fruition. So talk yourself into it. Now, this is all really good, but it's kind of meta, isn't it? Like, talk yourself into it, take one step. Like, practically speaking, how do you do that? This is where the second point comes in. Trust yourself. We all have this very incredible human urge to trust experts or trust very confident people and never really question them. If someone, especially someone in a position of authority or a subject matter expert, someone with that kind of reputation, tells you something with a great deal of certainty, you generally just believe them, right? That was my approach. I basically decided that a lot of experts and the so-called best practices that they've developed is based on such strong fundamental research and is grounded in such logic and rationale that any amount of time that I could spend understanding it as well so I could engage with them is really just a waste of time. Now, the entire exercise of taking this job and doing all of this was to go against my instincts. So that's exactly what I did. I kind of just ignored the fact that that's what I thought was the most efficient way to do something, and instead did something else. Every time I took on a project or decided that a problem was worth solving, I would do all of the core research right from scratch. And I'm going to be candid with you. It felt like I was wasting a ton of time. It felt constantly like I was reinventing the wheel. And here's the other thing about this. I didn't have all that much confidence in myself. So I would think, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it this way. And then I would just second-guess myself very aggressively and just blunder along, never really feeling quite comfortable with anything I was doing. But I kept at it, and something started to shift. And I want to give you an example to see if I can illustrate this better. In 2016, I was working on making Expensify GDPR compliant. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically this pain-in-the-ass regulation that EU passed. And if you were serving the EU customer base in any shape or form, then you needed to become GDPR compliant to continue. Now, generally what people did was submit to the reviewing authority. The reviewing authority will come back and say, here are all the gaps in your product that you need to fix. They would go and fix it, and then they would get the stamp of GDPR compliance. Fairly simple. Instead of doing that, I basically spent a few weeks, a few painfully boring weeks, reading all of the underlying regulatory literature. And the reason I was doing that was to try and understand the goals, like really what is this trying to accomplish? Can I get to the bottom of that? Because if I can do that, then I can identify the gaps myself. I did. I identified the gaps, we fixed them, we submitted, and they came back to me with this super long list of 30 deficiencies and said, yeah, that's cute. You still have all these deficiencies, so go back and fix it. This was super demoralizing because I was just like, this is just proof that I don't know what I'm talking about. But because I'd read all of the underlying logic, I kind of went out on a limb and started trying to identify why I didn't think some of these deficiencies made sense. And then I engaged in this dialogue with them to try to understand what are their assumptions and why do they think we need to fix this when I don't think we need to fix this. So we started having a conversation. Something amazing started to happen. More often than not, when I didn't think a deficiency made sense, I ended up being correct. This was shocking to me because I couldn't stress enough how little I believed in myself. And to give you a sense of scope, of the 30 or so deficiencies that they sent back to us, we finally ended up having to fix less than 5. This was mind-blowing to me, like crazy, crazy experiment. And I started doing this more often than not. And I realized this was not an edge case. This was the norm. It didn't make sense to assume someone else knows exactly what's right for you and never engage with them. So, what is the message for you here? And in your line of work, you have so many inputs all around you. There's less so for me, actually, to be honest, because you guys serve customers, right? And customers have strong views about what they want and what they think they need. And then you have your manager, maybe, or your peers that are working with a similar customer, and they have opinions on how you should do something. All of this is a lot of noise, and it's really hard to truly zone in and identify what you think. So my recommendation to you is center yourself and do your own homework. After you do your homework, if you think you should do X, and someone else is telling you that you should do Y instead, don't just capitulate and do Y. Instead, have a dialogue with them and try to understand their assumptions and try to explain your thinking and see what happens. Because I bet, in reality, you'll end up somewhere between X and Y. But I also bet you'll end up closer to X more often than not. Ultimately, motivation really comes from ownership, right? Like when you don't own your output, when you don't own your solutions, it's very hard to get motivated by it. So this recommendation that I'm talking about will obviously take more time to get these tasks completed, to get these projects done. And it will require you to have a more constructive, positive dialogue with the feedback that you're receiving, which in turn can sometimes be difficult and is more time-consuming. But your output will be exponentially better. But what's more, your output will be yours, and you will know what true motivation feels like. This brings us to the third point. Team up carefully. Now, I have this theory, and maybe it's not really so much a theory and maybe more obvious to you guys, but people, in my opinion, don't really leave their jobs because they hate their work or that there's too much of it. Sometimes they do, some people do, but that's largely the edge case. In my opinion, people quit their job because they hate the people they work with, or they just don't think their boss should be speaking to them the way that he or she is speaking to them. Or they just really don't like the people that surround them, they don't feel supported by them, they cannot thrive in that kind of environment. So every problem that an organization has, and really every merit that an organization has, can kind of be traced back to people. Conversely, if you think of the last project you worked on that you truly enjoyed, and I bet if you trace it back, it'll be about the group of people that you worked with, how you had so much fun together, how you brainstormed solutions together, and collectively the output was that much better. Because, we're not sociopaths, at least most of us are not, right? And we thrive in the company of others, and we want to fit in, and we want to be surrounded by people that we respect, that we think is inspiring, and we want to be more like them. That's the environment for success. Now, having said all that, I have a question for you guys. How often, if you're not actually in the hiring position, or if you're not actually managing a team and managing people, do you guys get actively engaged and involved with your company's hiring performance review process? I don't want to assume, maybe you guys do, but I never did. I just kind of assumed it was someone else's responsibility, and that was the last thing I would engage with, and I never really gave it my heart and soul. Which doesn't make any sense. If all of your joy in work is primarily driven by the people that surround you, then you should be engaged in that, yeah? So my recommendation again, or my advice, or my tip, is to get involved with these processes. Because you need to own this, and you need to make sure every single person that's walking in the door into your company is an A player. And then you need to make sure you hold all your colleagues to a higher standard. Hold them accountable. Make sure that they remain A players. Steve Jobs actually has a really funny quote that completely lands this point. A players hire other A players, but B players hire C players, and C players hire D players. It doesn't take long before you get to Z. It's this trickle-down effect that causes bozo explosions in companies. I think it's safe to say none of us want to work with bozos, right? So we got to own this. Quick summary of what we discussed. Talk yourself into it and not out of it. You are bigger, bolder, and richer than you give yourself credit for. Trust yourself. Do your homework and stay engaged. Team up mindfully, team up carefully. You are the company you keep. Live amongst A players. I think all of you have kind of worked through your champagne, and I'm going to run out of goodwill, so that's where I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope what I had to say will be at all useful to you at some point. Cheers.
Anu, cheers to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are so grateful for you. Cheers.